So on behalf of the Kerala Museum, on behalf of City Book leaders and Mr. Joseph, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you today. And I'm really pleased that Mrs. Maini and Mrs. Varma were able to make the time out of their very busy schedules running RRVH Foundation to be here with us today and share some of the stories of preserving this very precious legacy of all of ours. And it is an amazing task and an amazing, purpose to have, especially from our last event at the museum. We had Manu on one of our talks just recently, and I was just thinking the hall was so packed. And don't you really wish we could do that right now? But we're making do, as humans generally do. And that's our spirit. So keeping this alive, even during COVID times, is very important. And it's great to see that RRVH has been doing such great events throughout. And I've been able to catch some of them I've not been able to catch, but it's been really good. So yeah, so I think over to Mr. Joseph. I think we should start now. It's 6:33 and yeah. And slowly people will join in. We have 51 people on already. So I think we should get going and let's begin. Thank you, everybody. Let's go.
Right. Is it for me to take over, Aditi?
Yes, Mr. Joseph. Please go.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Especially thank you, Ms. Rukmani Varma, Ms. Gitanjali Maini, and welcome to everybody who is now tuned in already. Welcome to the 7th episode of All That's Kerala, a chat along the backwaters. It's a twice-monthly program that City Book leaders and Kerala Museum are presenting. What we try to do is we try to introduce Kerala to the country and to the world, and of course, to Kerala itself. So let me first thank Mohit of City Book Leaders and Aditi of the Kerala Museum Kochi for organizing this show and supporting it in various ways. This episode, the 7th episode, 7th is always lucky, and we're very lucky to have to make this a very special episode. Actually, for 3 special reasons. Today's episode is special because for the first time we have 2 guests in the show. Normally we have only 1, and this is the first time we're having 2 guests in the show. Second, it's special because we have women in the show for the first time. We've always had men so far, and it's a pleasure to see these, to have women on the show. So that's the second special reason. And the third special reason is that both our guests are women. So let me first welcome our guests tonight. Let me first welcome Ms. Rukmani Varma. Now, how do you introduce royalty? How do you introduce a princess? How do you introduce a princess painter? How do you introduce a person that everybody knows and yet may not know because she doesn't like to be in the limelight, but her name says it all. Let me introduce Her Highness Bharani Thirunal Rukmani Bai Thampuran, 4th Princess of Travancore. She comes from a land that was once upon a time a land of splendid Maharajas, and yes, Maharanis, who were rulers in their own right, and fabulous courts, to an unbroken 1,200 year-long lineage. And her grandmother, Maharani Setu Lakshmi Bai, was the ruler of Travancore, a state with 5 million people in her own right, not as a regent, but as a Maharani. And today, Rukmani Varma is the titular Maharani of Travancore. And her brother, in Travancore, we follow the matrilineal line, but the king, and her brother is the next in line to the titular Maharaja of Travancore. And therefore, he is also, as many of you may be interested in knowing, he would have the rights as the custodian of the famous, fabulous wealth of the Sri Padmanabha Swami temple. I know that Ms. Varma would disdain all such introductions. with a humility that only the Travancore royalty can possess. But let me welcome and introduce her also as the great-granddaughter of Raja Ravi Varma, about whom we are talking today. This episode is on Raja Ravi Varma, a Raja among painters. And so let me introduce her also as one of India's most renowned painters, and also as the founder, director of the Raja Ravi Varma Heritage Foundation. Custodian of Raja Ravi Varma's artistic and royal legacy, Rukmini Varma conceived the RRV Heritage Foundation, of which she is the chairperson today, and her son Jay Varma is the founder trustee. May I welcome you, Ms. Rukmini Varma. I would also like to introduce and welcome Ms. Gitanjali Maini, who is an art connoisseur, a promoter, and a curator, a person who has done a great deal for painting and art and culture. She runs a Gallery G, which is an art resource providing informed access to the best art and consultancy services in the country and across the world. In their partnership with Gitanjali Maini as managing trustee of the foundation, the Raja Ravi Varma Heritage Foundation, both Gitanjali Maini and Rukmani Varma have provided greater access than ever to Raja Ravi Varma's legacy. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for being on our show. It's a great honor for me. I'm not a painter myself. I'm not an artist. So it's a great honor for me to have both of you on our show and this chat. Let me begin by first talking to Gitanjali Maini. Let me ask you, Gitanjali, what is it about Raja Ravi Varma that is so very special that has prompted you to team up with Ms. Rukmani Varma and focus on Raja Ravi Varma? What is it about his painting or his life and what he has contributed that has attracted you to do this? How did this happen? How did you come to meet with Ms. Rukmani Varma and set this RRV Heritage Foundation up? How did the idea come to you?
So, good evening.
All yours, Gitanjali. I think I talked to you.
Yes, good evening to everybody, to all the organizers, to you especially, Mr. Joseph, to all the viewers. So it was quite simple. One had already started, one had been 17 years in the industry already with art, and I started playing a more active role even in the Kochi Museries Biennale. And in all these searches back then, about 2012-13, one realized that there was a foundation for every artist, almost all our senior artists, M.F. Hussain, Raza, Gaitonde, Tayyab Mehta, but one was missing for Raja Ravi Varma, and I could never put a finger on why it was. I met Jay because at that time the foundation didn't exist, and when I met Jay, he was a recipient of a grant of the private foundation, the Sandeep and Gitanjali Maini Foundation, and when he was going to study, he said, you must meet my mother. And I went to meet Mrs. Varma, and that was May 15th, 2015, for the very first time. And the moment I saw her, I said, we spoke, and I said, we don't have a foundation for Raja Ravi Varma, and that's what the family should do, because you all have everything. You have lineage, you have legacy, you have artistic legacy. And she said, Gita, yes, this has been on my mind forever. And if you take it up and you're on the managing trustee role, we'll go for it. And for all of us who know us, Mrs. Varma is extremely sweet, affectionate, and very persuasive. So there I was on the roll, and 4 months later, September 15, 2015, we had registered as a foundation with taking the lead role. So that's the background.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, it's a story that I think needs to be told every time, because you are preserving a heritage that we all know a little bit about, but we do not know quite in depth. I will turn my next question to Mrs. Rukmani Varma, if she wouldn't mind. But before that, let me also point out that the founder partner of Kochi Biennale is also amongst us, and so is Mr. Manu S. Pillai, the author of The Ivory Throne. both of them are here, and I would welcome them and request them to, if I make mistakes in my questioning, to correct me in my questions and things. Please help me chat along. Let me turn to Mrs. Rukmani Varma. Mrs. Varma, let me take you back to your early years in your grandmother's house, the Travancore Maharani Setu Lakshmi Bai's house. It must have been a fairy tale then. There must have been an enchanting aura around you. There must be having a lot of ceremony and pomp around you. You being the royal princess, the first grandchild, the first granddaughter, the eldest grandchild of the Maharani, and obviously the favorite. And there, in your childhood, in that royal environment, must have been where you were first exposed to your great-great-grandfather, Raja Ravi Varma. Let me ask you, what were your earliest memories of that house and of a forefather called Raja Ravi Varma and of his paintings? As a child, what is it that appealed to you about Raja Ravi Varma and those paintings?
Oh, yeah. That's a wonderful question, because it goes back to wonderful memories that I have with my grandmother and all of us in the palace. By the way, I'd rather be known as an artist than anything else, because right from childhood, I was able to contact with the beautiful works of art that my grandmother had. And I used to spend hours looking at those beautiful paintings that she had. And I had this great urge to paint myself. And of course, Raja Ravi Varma was a subject we always spoke about. And my grandmother and I had a lot of conversations about him, about his various achievements and how he was in his own studio. My grandmother knew a lot about it, because actually she was his favorite grandchild. And they had a lot of wonderful moments in her childhood when he used to come to visit her with a little present. And she remembers all of that. So there was this aura of painting and my grandfather at the back of it all. So this was something that just was built in me from a very, very young age. And almost even before I started to write, I started to paint with the watercolor boxes that were available. So, but you see, the traditional, the background did not allow me to go to an art school as such, which I wanted very much. So I had to pick up everything on my own and start painting on my own. Whatever I could, by trial and error, so to speak. Of course, I looked at a lot of books on painting and all of that. And so I started to build up a little by little. And then, of course, it just grew into me. It became a great passion. I couldn't live without painting. It came to a stage where it was like breathing, more important than breathing, actually. So then, of course, we went through our education, college, school, all of it. But in between, always managed to find time to paint. So my memory, my whole, let me say, my whole creative psyche in me is actually based upon my great-great-grandfather's works. So that is the way I've always been, looked up to him as a great person who was able to express something in such wonderful ways, which was not done in those days. He was the very first person to paint in realistic style. And his style also had a very specific, it was a specific niche which was not occupied by anybody else. He was a very intuitive man, very intuitive. And when he painted a portrait, he was able to intuitively go deep into the subject and get his character. So he brought out the characteristics beautifully in his paintings, because of this intuitive ability that he had. And that is because that the place where he comes from, his family in Kilimanur, is a highly talented family, and they all have this enormous talent. They've all been grown up with either painting or music, and therefore it was only natural that Ravi Varma also imbued the same ambience from there, and he was able to connect with this form of expression. So this is the basis of how he was able to bring out the beauty of the subjects he painted, because of his deep intuition and how he was able to go into a subject and find out the characteristic, translate it through paints onto the canvas. This is something, there are many painters, but very few.
And he passed that on to you.
Pardon? Yes? No, pass.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, Mr. Joseph, you were saying about my lineage and all that. I'd rather be known as an artist and not as anything else, just an artist.
Right,
just
indeed.
Artist.
Right, indeed. You said you started painting before you started writing. So you're a painter. And then you are far more, from what you said, I also realized you're far ahead of your times, because you started as a selfie painter. You said you were painting yourself. So I mean, we talk of selfie photographs now. So you're a selfie painter. But let me ask you, which of Raja Ravi Varma's paintings impressed you most, as perhaps as a teenager? Which one? Is there a particular painting that impressed you? And if so, why?
I was always impressed by this one painting called The Victory of Indrajeet. And that is actually, it has a number of people, and it's been conceptualized and constructed in such a way that it is a pyramidal concept. And you have a figure at the top, and you know the other figures at the foreground. And every bit of that painting tells a story. Everything you see, the scene is actually the son of Ravana, who has gone into Devaloka, captured Indra and brought him before his father. So he has also brought all the wealth of Devaloka, all the wealth of Swarga. So, you know, that whole ambience of that painting he has brought out with small objects around. You can see a small little pot, which is a gold kind of pot in front, which is, you may figure that is part of the wealth he has brought from Devaloka. You can look at it and conjecture. Everything tells the story and how he has built it all around to this main subject. That was so beautiful. And I used to stand and look at it. So that was one very.
Do you see the heavens in that?
Pardon?
Oh, thank you so much. Did you? I must think you saw the heavens in that. And talking about Devaloka,
yes.
There was a lot of religion in his paintings. The gods came alive in his paintings. And many of his paintings are even today revered not as paintings but as gods themselves. Where did this religious angle come in?
Absolutely. You see, that was his great genius, that he brought gods down to earth and accessible to people, you see. And so the whole thing became a scene you could connect with, because you can identify yourself with people in this mythological scenes that he paints. And he brings it out in as if it's a photograph, you're watching a photo of something that actually happened. So that there lies his genius, how he actualized the whole thing. I will call it the art of actualization. And that is the very important contribution he has made, because no other artist in the entire world has succeeded in reaching every single home in the nation that the way he did. No other, or think of the masters, the Western masters, for example, their works are in palaces, papal palaces, or in mansions, or in the houses of dukes, lords and ladies. It didn't reach the common man. until very late. And even now in the Western world, you don't find this sort of a wide appreciation of something. And that is because he actualized the gods whom you pray to. He actualized them so that they were accessible. It was not going to a temple, because there you have a vigraha or a murti or a stone representation of the god or goddess. Here you have the actual person. So that was done only by him in such a way. This is why he is so great. And not only, there is another very important thing which I don't know if people have realized. He is, instrumental in unifying India at that time when there was British oppression and suppression of everything Indian. He brought an Indianness to the whole, the identity of an Indian, because it's not only just gods and goddesses that he painted various subjects of various different, caste and creed. Is it? Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, we can hear you. Go, please go ahead.
So that's what he did.
I would also ask our audience.
Yes. Yes.
I would also ask. I have a practice of asking our audience to key in questions, and I would also ask Bose Krishnamachari and Manu S. Pillai to step in with any comments or suggestions as we go along. You spoke about the religious, the religious content of his paintings, and why it's in everybody's household. I think you briefly mentioned, and I'm going to pick that out. You briefly mentioned that he was perhaps the greatest painter, and there are a lot of social reasons for it. He was not an ordinary painter, but he was an ordinary man's painter. He appealed to the ordinary person. So there were also social reasons for his paintings being so great. Would you like to comment on that? Am I right or am I off the mark?
You're very right. The thing is, he never distinguished between caste or creed or anything. He painted all castes, all creeds, and united them. And I would say that played a big part in the Swaraj movement, because he made Indians feel Indian, that they were one. Under his brush, all Indians became together. So, and the characters he painted were so lifelike. Again, his art of actualization was such that they could identify themselves with the subjects. And because of that, they were able to, they feel proud, they were Indians. He brought that Indianness into the subjects he painted. So, can I continue to speak? Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
So that was a very important contribution that he made to make India one under his brush, an Indianness, so to speak. Everybody felt proud to be an Indian, and they could recognize themselves in the paintings that he did. So this was a very important achievement. And this is something only he has been able to achieve as an artist. So this is one thing that we have.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And you were speaking about the social
aspect. Yes? Please go ahead.
Indeed, as you were saying, the social aspect of it. This is how he contributed to the society, how everybody became proud of being Indian. The way he painted everybody as wonderful Indian subjects, not only the gods and goddesses, but this is another achievement that he was able to, do. That was another thing which was it was a commendable.
Thank you so much. Let me just move on now.
Yes.
Mrs. Varma, you are a painter yourself. You're a great painter. You're one of the greatest Indian contemporary painters, and your great grandfather Raja Ravi Varma would have influenced you. Can I ask you how his oeuvre has impacted on your paintings?
Well, I greatly admired his style, but I wanted my own style as well. So based upon his concept and his style of working, I somehow, I sort of developed a genre of my own. So in this way, not only do I say thank you to my great-great-grandfather, but I also live up to the fact that he perhaps wanted me to do something of my own as well. So this was something I always wanted to do. So in this way, I hope I can carry on his legacy, you know, not in principle attached to him, but yes, you was going to say.
Yeah, you said somewhere, I'm picking on that, you said somewhere that Raja Ravi Varma would communicate with you as you painted, that you were connected with him, that you often felt that he was by your side as you painted. Is it really true?
That's it's very strange. And actually, it's very odd to speak about it because it's something that perhaps normally you won't be able to, comprehend. But there have been moments when I've been painting and I've reached a particular spot where I said, oh, now what? What do I do now? And from somewhere came this message, do this or that color or this color. And it worked. So I felt that that was a communication I was receiving from my great-grandfather. So this, and it has helped me a lot. Yes, that is.
Very, very interesting to know. You said earlier about the Indianness of his paintings and how he contributed, therefore, to the feeling of India, this notion of India against the colonial tendencies of that time.
Yes.
How would you compare? I mean, this is a difficult question for me to ask, and but still, how would you compare his paintings and his style with, say, the paintings of the Renaissance masters, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, etc.? And I believe you've traveled a lot. Manu has sent a question, which I'm going to articulate now. He says that you've traveled a lot in Europe. Obviously, yes. Yeah. So how do you compare his paintings with that of European painters, their art, not only the Renaissance painters, but the modern contemporary painters?
Yes, this is something that a lot of people have. At one time, persons like Havel and Kumaraswamy have blamed him for being westernized in his work. But actually speaking, he was not being Western, he was being realistic. Realism is the same thing in whatever country you produce it. The difference here lay in the fact that he brought in his own ideas of creation, his own idea of how to bring out a subject. As I said before, he was intuitive. Not all painters are. If you just paint a beautiful picture and leave it, and it has no soul, then it becomes just a painting. But a painting with a soul is something very different. And this is what he achieved. There may be a lot of people who say, oh, there are a lot of Western artists who have done a lot of work in this way. Oh, what is the difference here? There is a difference. Because if you look at his subjects and if you look at his paintings, there is always a soul behind it, and there is a story to tell. He has a story to tell, and that story he has brought out in even small little objects around the subject and the background. Everything tells a story, and all it's a confluence onto the subject. So this is something that very few people can achieve. I mean, not all artists can do that. You can paint a beautiful picture maybe, but not paint a picture with a soul, and that's quite different. A soul means you go right into the subject and find out the nature and the characteristics of that person through your perception, and how you bring that out through colors. That is something very, very few people are able to do. And I think he was a past master at it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that explanation. His techniques might have been European, but the soul of his paintings was Indian. And that's the point you're making.
Yes.
And clearly, realism was behind it, because this was at a time when we didn't have photographs to capture realism. The only way you could capture realism and show it to the common man was by making the paintings realistic, and that's what you did. So I think that's a very important point you brought in. Thank you so much. I'll move on to Gitanjali now.
Yes.
Gitanjali, there are a couple of questions I'd like to ask you now. You've been working for the last 5 years, as you said, with Mrs. Varma. You worked on many themes, keeping Raja Ravi Varma's paintings as the center and source of your inspiration. And particularly the last year, 2020, has been a very difficult year. Yet your foundation has gone and put together a host of programs, lectures, and talks on the virtual space. So how has it been these 5 years, and especially this last 1 year, 2020, trying to we don't have to recreate interest in Raja Ravi Varma, it's always been there, but to look at his paintings thematically and virtually, how has it been? How has that experience been for you?
So that's what it is. I think the first thing that we decided when we set up the foundation was to curatorially get our programming with as much diversity as we can, so we can appeal to all kinds of audiences. So one of the programs that we were very proud of and successfully launched was the Botanical Project, because this was an intention of getting the new generation in, which is about 24 and under. So we created this platform with Botanical. We got botanists to come in and identify some plants seen in Ravi Varma's paintings, fruit, flora, fauna, and then bring the interest in. And eventually we had created a program which was suitable for grade 1 students all the way up to PhD students. And the Dean of Trustee Design School is the one who helped us form it. It's an accredited course in Trustee today, and children are getting up to 3 credits for doing it. So that's one thing that we got. And, we would get questions at the sessions like, where is Ravi Varma from? And they would just draw a blank. So, it was about teaching a whole new generation. And that was one thing that was very, very fulfilling for us. In the lockdown and because Mrs. Varma has always wanted this in some sense, that geographical boundaries, Gita, should not exist in the foundation. So how do we take it as far as we could? Because our artist, as you know, because of the way he was brought up and his religious leanings, never allowed him to leave the country. So she said at least his work and his talk and his oeuvre must travel outside. These kind of platforms allow us to do that. So we have done sessions that with Patrick Connors, who covers techniques, Partha Mittal, who talks about how there was a Gurchino effect that came into Kerala. There was Rupika Chawla, who spoke about the Puranic paintings. There was Dipanjana Pal, who talked about how an Indian beauty was created of some sorts, because it moved away from regional to an Indian beauty. Dipti Sashidharan talked about archiving and the importance of archiving. So I think we're covering a whole bunch of topics and trying to keep our sessions as diverse as possible. So I think that's what has been the goal.
What has been the response to this?
So it's been great responses. We do them on a platform. We've been using Zoom. So we've been doing the Zoom webinar platforms based on registrations. And we open it onto our Facebook page, which is close to 1 lakh of followers. And every event sees at least 15,000 to up to 75,000 viewers when we go live. So great.
Doing amazing work.
And from here,
thank you so much. Recently,
yes, and from here we are moving into podcasts as well. So from here, from webinars in November, by Diwali, we are moving into podcasts as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I recently, saw an exhibition that was curated by the foundation on Google's art and cultural platform on Raja Ravi Varma. It's a splendid way for an immersive experience and for the public to learn the final details of the art. In fact, I learned a lot. I'm not into painting, but I think if I can understand art a teeny bit today, as I speak to both of you, it's because I went through that Google's art and culture platform. And last December 2019, you were at the museum, at the Kerala Museum, and you showcased, along with Mrs. Varma, a lot of Ravi Varma's original oil works. What aspects of What was the response to it, and how did you come to think of such a exhibition in Kerala, in Cochin, in Kerala Museum?
So, a great question is to answer the first part about Google Arts and Culture. Since Bose is here, he knows. I mean, I saw what Google Arts and Culture did for KMB. It helped map the region. It helped. It's in Fort Kochi, and nobody who attended Kerala or doesn't even go to Fort Kochi wouldn't see it. So here was Google Arts and Culture taking KMB all over the world, and I saw how it impacted the footfalls, and it was such a positive thing. So when we started the foundation, I reached out to GAC, and I told them we have very few exhibits just now, but we had a handshake, and we said that over the years, what we will do is we'll create a lot of exhibits, we'll collect a lot of items, and periodically release these exhibits into the e-space so people can get to know more. And since the first time we tied up with them to today, we have 20 exhibits live there. We have over 506 items sort of featured in the various exhibitions. And one thing that we're really proud about is this year we suggested to GAC that why don't you not just talk about the foundation, but why don't you bring all bodies, whether they are hobby groups, there are other institutions, foundations, doing things on Ravi Varma, good work on Ravi Varma, bring it all to one platform, as we have done for Van Gogh or Picasso, and let's just make this the largest platform there is for Ravi Varma. And that was what happened with Google Arts and Culture for us, and that's what we've been able to do. The Kochi Museum exhibit was because we wanted to acknowledge the contemporaries of Ravi Varma, be it Shekhar Warrior, Rajaraja Varma, Mukundan Tampi, and we had such a wonderful response from collectors and owners in Kerala that when we said that this is what we want to do and we want to bring it to Kochi for the first time. In fact, I must tell you this, Mr. Joseph, I'm very, very Kochi. It's like home to me. I grew up there in 75 and 76 in Koratti, so I was very close by. So Kochi was our place. I have a great attachment to the place. Kochi is exceptionally welcoming to us, and to me particularly. So there was no question of not taking what is our best exhibition there. And Aditi sort of laid out the red carpet for us. And, we put out these paintings. School children were coming by the droves. We didn't have enough space to seat them. Rupika Chawla and our other guest here today, Manu Pillai, he was a speaker, and Manu just spellbinds everybody. So it was nice to have him speak and sort of give that contemporary artist list a lot of acknowledgement that perhaps, they maybe in some level been overshadowed by Ravi Varma. It doesn't take away the fact that they're great artists. So it was our first attempt to acknowledging everyone from the region.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gita. For those who do not know Gita, let me also, she's from Koratti, of course. She's from Kerala. She's just said that. She also belongs to the Maini family, which I don't know how many of you know. Mr. Maini, I hope you don't mind my saying that, was the first to develop an electric car in India. It was like 20-25 years ago when the thought of electric cars were not even common across the world. He is the one who started it. He's still it's about 80 plus, I believe, and Gitanjali is Maini's daughter-in-law. I thought I'll say that on the side. I hope you don't mind. Let me move on now. Just reminding our viewers that our next episode of All That's Kerala will be 2 weeks from now on 14th November, Saturday, Children's Day, and it will be on the delicious food that Kerala serves up. And we are going to call that episode From Karimeen to Kuliki Sarbat, the cuisines of Kerala. And I'll be chatting with Thomas Fenn. Thomas Fenn, as some of you may know, is a young culinary entrepreneur who runs a restaurant in Delhi, in Saket, that sells Malayali food, Kerala food. The restaurant is called Mahabeli, not Mahabali, but Mahabeli, the belly as in the stomach. Thomas will take us 2 weeks from now through the varied cuisine of Kerala, the cultural and religious and regional differences of the cuisine, the history of the food in the state, and where he sees the Malayali palate and Malayali culinary habits going from here. From Karimeen to Kulki Sarbat, the cuisines of Kerala, 14th November 20. let me continue with this chat. I'm going over again to Mrs. Rukmani Varma. Uh, uh, Mrs. Varma, you've written a book on Raja Varma called The Hidden Truth. What is that you tell in the book of Raja Ravi Varma that is hidden? What is that truth which was hidden, which you brought out?
Yes, this
Mrs.
is
Varma.
not many people know his creative consciousness and how he brought it out and expressed it in his paintings. So I started off with an out-of-body experience where, you know, he's looking and seeing himself on his own deathbed, and a flashback of everything that happened to him from then on. And so in the book, I traced, first of all, his origins, where he came from, because that played an important part in the development of his creative psyche. So this family in Kilimanur are known for their extremely artistic achievements. They all are highly talented, but not many of them have come out into the open. So Raja Ravi Varma from a very young age started to paint, and his uncle, who was himself a very extremely good painter, spotted him and took him under his care, and that is how he developed. But then, of course, he went on to develop in a much more comprehensive manner, you see, and that is because he continued his pursuit of finding out how to actually bring everything that he painted, to actually bring it. That's why I called it the art of actualization. And for this, he undertook many little experiments of his own. I came across a book where he had just noted certain things very briefly, sometimes just one word. And I looked at the book, and suddenly I seemed to develop a kind of image of what he was trying to do, what he was trying to say, and how he was trying to bring out this actualization of subjects. So as I followed the path that he was taking, slowly things began to form in my mind as to how he might have the psychic part of it is something that nobody knows about. The creative psyche is a very rare, is a very strange psyche. And sometimes if it is combined with intuition, as it was in the case of Raja Ravi Varma, then you hit the correct chord, hit the note, and you're able to actualize all the better. So what he did, you see, you see, he was so good at actualization. I'll tell you a small incident that occurred there. There was one of the female members of his family, who's a Tambrati, you know. In those days, they are very orthodox, and they don't go out and reveal themselves to people. This lady had a throat problem, and she had to see a doctor. And now, of course, doctors are definitely not allowed in that place at that time. So what did he do? He painted her throat. No, she opened her mouth, he painted her throat, and that was shown to the doctor. The doctor diagnosed what was wrong with her, and she was treated that way. So this is the level of actualization that he was able to do. And the book actually goes up to the climax where he does a painting, which was what he was always aiming at. While he painted, he should be so much in tune with everything that he was painting that it would become an actual thing. So he was painting this famous scene of the Sri Rama shooting an arrow into the ocean. And there you see he was so absorbed into it, and he had brought all his actualization, effort into it, that actually at that particular time when he was painting, thunder occurred outside. And there was a lot of people who were present who actually witnessed this. So he was able, well, call it whatever, a coincidence or not, but whatever it is, It just shows that he was so much in tune with nature and that he was able to command the forces of nature in order to complete his paintings. So this was the process that he was working through, was what I was writing about in the book, the whole process from beginning to end. So this was an
There are a few
exciting,
questions which have come.
it's an extremely exciting journey for me, because one led to the other and the whole story unfolded. And it was as if through his own mouth, he was telling me what he did. So this was why it was called the hidden truth, because this is something nobody knew. And these are this was based from the book that I read, you know, the notebook that he had. And of course, it was not an explicit notebook. There was not much written there. I had to piece it together and evaluate it and bring it out in the way I thought it should be brought out. So anyway, that was a most hidden part of the whole thing, which had to be revealed, definitely revealed. And this is the reason why it was called Hidden Truth. Only when you read it, you reach the climax of how he progressed from his experiments into that final moment of when he did this painting and actualized it. Nature came in tune with him. Nature responded to his brush. And that was the ultimate moment. So then he was extremely satisfied that he was able to do this thing. Unfortunately, this was towards the end.
Mrs. Varma, you not only have a word.
Can you hear me?
Mrs. Varma, you not only have a way with your painting, you have a way with words. You paint with your words as well. I mean, amazing the way you describe the book and the thunder and the lightning. There are a lot of questions which have come in, and I'm going to take one from Pragya Jain. Oh, sorry. Which I'm so sorry. Which is give me a minute, I think. I'm going to take a question from Pragya Jain. She's asked, can you please talk a little bit about Raja Ravi Varma's palette? Then another question from Prithvi Prabhu. Considering the popularity of Raja Ravi Varma, especially with the common man, which artist of today do you think meets his requirement? Is there anybody meets his, he says requirement, but what he means is, would be that what meets his style and his, the way he has worked. Can you answer these questions? There are lots of other questions too.
About his style.
Meets his style, meets his style.
Sorry, I couldn't. Can you repeat that once more, please?
Anybody, the artist you feel is closest to his style.
Anybody?
The artist you feel is closest to his style.
Closest to his style. Well,
that's
actually,
right.
in today's scene, I don't know, his style was entirely different. As I said, his actualization process and all that was something quite unique to him. But closest to his style is something...
Auntie, you must say what you want to say. It's J.
Well, I didn't want to be myself to say it, but yes, he is really the closest that you can think of, because his style is actually a perfectionist style, and he has perfected the use of color, the actual proportions of the figure, and absolutely realistic to a point of a very high standard. So I must say that is that I didn't want to say it because it's my own son. So thank you for prompting me, Gita. Well, that is his work is really absolutely phenomenal today. Yes.
There's a question on this from Chudamani Nandagopal. He says, firstly, he speaks about the celebrated women from Raja Ravi Varma's family, and then he goes on to ask about color. What is the color scheme that you as an artist find Raja Ravi Varma always fascinated, both him and you?
Mr. Joseph, Dr. Chudamani Nandagopal is a she. She's a Tagore Fellow. And
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I just thought I should, and she's...
it says doctors.
patron of the foundation. So I just thought I should just correct him. She's a UNESCO fellow as well.
My apologies.
No problem. I just thought I'll tell you.
My apologies. Sorry, Mrs. Chudamani.
What was the question? The colors that he...
Would you like to answer the question?
Yes. The colors that he used.
What is the color that fascinated?
The color that fascinated. Oh, okay. I think there was in most of his work, you will see a bit of red somewhere. So the color red, he used to emphasize a lot of emotions in his works. Just as, there was a Western artist, Rubens, who did that. But in Ravi Varma, he modified it to suit his particular requirements. As for me, well, you see, I go according to what I'm painting and what the scene needs most at that point, at that particular, concept which I'm developing. So you can't say there is a particularly favorite color. Well, colors are all colors. They're all beautiful. And if you realize the enormous shades of colors that there are in this universe, then color will just blow your mind, yes. So all colors will be most absolutely fantastic for a painter. And each color should be equally dealt with.
I'm fascinated by that blue color.
Yes.
I'm fascinated by that blue color you're wearing. It's sort of,
Yes.
it's really fascinating.
That is indigo. Actually, today being Saturday, it's a day for black and indigo. You know, each day has a color. And I try to follow that. Yes.
Oh, I see. I didn't know.
And I like
Each day has a color.
Yes.
Look at me wearing this drab gray.
You should have been wearing an indigo shirt.
There's another question, Mrs. Varma.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Your question.
Thank you so much for explaining that. There's a question. There's a question which says, have you ever tried repainting Raja Ravi Varma's painting? Have you tried doing that?
Oh, never. That is something which I've not attempted. I've admired it quite a lot, but to repaint his works is something that did not, strike me at all. I have painted some of the works that he has done in a different way, trying to find out how that would be. Like, for example, the Ravana and Sita. I've done my own version of it. And other works as well, which he has done, a few of them. I've done my own work to see how we could fit another idea into it. While I admire his work most profoundly, it's not something I would copy actually, because I would like to do my own interpretation of the same things that struck him perhaps, but not in the same manner. That is.
Sure.
There's another question. Would you know the total number of paintings that the great painter Prince painted?
Well, he has painted more than 2,000 works. That's I know that for sure. And I don't know where half of them are there today, but a number of works has been, I think, lost. We don't know. I think we should go on a hunt, finding out from nooks and corners where it could be. Yes, he was the most prolific painter. And every moment of his time he was painting. He started work at 6 o'clock and finished only at 6 in the evening when the sun's rays became dim and he was unable to see true colors. He painted right throughout. So
his paintings, as much as I've seen them, and your paintings, they often are show perfectly chiseled bodies. You know, your paintings of some of the bodies are amazing, and the ornamentation, the jewels that come with the paintings, the jewels of men especially, they are so detailed, they are almost realistic at times. And so is Raja Ravi Varma's paintings of Shakuntala's picture, for example. It's a perfect body. So it's very realistic, as you said. It's so realistic that the jewels, some of those you painted of the men in the painting of the king, I can't quite remember which king that was, but he was setting out for a war. You might be able to help me there. It is so realistic. Your comments on that?
Yeah. Well, that is, you see, there's always a symbiosis, a connection between jewelry and humans. This goes down to a very ancient times, right from ancient times. There has been this deep connect between jewelry and human beings. And jewelry not only enhances the appearance, but it also has other therapeutic values, as well as it has a way of relieving stress. Jewelry, different types of jewelry, when you wear them, you feel much more at ease. And so mentally and physically, jewelry plays an important part in the life of a person. So this is why at weddings, you deck yourself with jewelry. Or in ancient times, people wore so much jewelry because it was an indication of not only just wealth and prosperity, but also of well-being, of your mental state, your mental well-being as well. So this connection with jewelry and human body is a very important, wonderful thing. It's come down to us from the ages.
Men don't wear jewelry very much these days, except for rings and things. So this bond you say, sorry?
Yes. No, continue. Yes.
So this bond you say, not a bond between, it's a bond between humans and jewelry, not necessarily between women and jewelry.
No, in the ancient days, men wore jewelry as well. They wore a lot of jewelry. But now, of course, things change. Jewelry is not there. It has been other things like clothes and different accessories have taken its place. But in ancient times, this was the importance. Men and women wore equal amount of jewelry. Actually, there was no difference at all, equal amount. Now, of course, things have changed, times change, we change with the times. So instead of jewelry, other accessories have taken the place of it.
Right. The two questions on the painting that is behind you, both are asking whether it is Raja Ravi Varma's painting and what it depicts. What?
No, that is my grandmother.
I'm not able to see it very much myself because I'm using
It's the portrait of my grandmother, which I painted.
Oh, right. The one that is.
Yes? I can't hear.
One.
Yes?
That's a painting of the Maharani.
Yes.
Which is as in real life, as tall as her. Is that the one?
Yes, it is my grandmother. I painted this some years ago. It's a portrait of hers. Yes.
The senior Maharani.
Yes, yes.
Now we spoke earlier about Raja Ravi Varma's depiction of Hindu deities and gods. Was he a deeply religious person?
Yeah, he was deeply religious. That's how he grew up. But, you know, he brought all his interest and passion into painting later on. And it was like a meditation when he painted. So his religious background helped in his expression. But that is it. Then from there, he carried on to his own way of doing his work. Yes.
There are lots of questions, but I don't think time permits us to ask more. But one point is also what I'd like to touch upon is that he was an affordable painter. His lithographs, etc., reached ordinary people.
Yes.
Otherwise, painting was only something which the royalty could buy, or extremely rich people, or the wealthy. But Raja Ravi Varma's paintings were affordable, especially his lithographs. That enhances reach. Isn't that true? Am I wrong in saying that?
No, not at all. It has reached everybody, and that because of his lithographs, the work has reached everybody, and that's a wonderful thing that he was able to achieve. Not many artists have done that. Yes. What was your question?
Thank you. So, it was not a question, it was more a comment. I was asking whether my assessment that he was an affordable painter was right.
Yes. Affordable, yes. Because
He paid very well. Wasn't that so, Mrs. Varma? He was paid very well, and the lithographic press that he set up actually drove a big hole in his pocket. And as a foundation, what we have decided, and we did do, is we set out with this documentary, Blue Ribbon documentary maker called Vikas Aras, to cover the purpose of the press. Because all we know is that, of course, the gods and goddesses got to the houses, and that was the larger purpose, and to make the paintings more affordable, like you said. But what did happen is, he got broke and eventually severed the ties, not before he moved it 4 times around the country. And when we look back, I think that's what happened. It made him a social phenomenon in one sense. And The Wanderers Between Worlds, made by Vikas Aras, which we have showcased, it's considered a Google artifact because they really like the documentary of how we covered the whole journey of the press, and is now being showcased in the St. Petersburg Museum. And we are just tying up for 2 film festivals as well. So that's going to probably take that journey across.
Thank you, Gitanjali. My last question, or last 2 questions. At a time when paintings which are more abstract and which takes time for us to interpret and understand rules the day, and at a time when there are films and photographs that bring realism to our home, augmented reality and whatnot, why does the type of realistic portraits painted by Raja Ravi Varma still continue to hold people like you and me in such thrall and charm? I'd like both Mrs. Varma to answer it, and you, Gitanjali.
Mrs. Varma, all yours.
Well,
Okay,
the most
right.
important thing to remember is a photographic lens is not like a human lens. The human eye sees much more than a photographic lens. So when an artist paints a portrait, the portrait lives in a more dramatic way and a more truthful way than a camera will. Or so a film or any of this is not to be compared at all with a portrait that an artist paints. Because the artist brings out, as I said, the soul of the subject. The artist sees with a human eye lens and not an artificial lens of the photographer. So that is the difference.
And also, the way they dressed up for the portrait, it takes you back at that exact period of history as well. So there's something more detailed about the representation, whether it's medals, whether it's a particular brooch that a woman is wearing, jewelry, a head artifact, a mukuti, whatever it is, it's so beautifully depicted. It takes you back exactly into that. And the session that we had with Patrick Connors told us about the technique. If it was royalty that he looked up to, then he doesn't meet eye with that person. And if it was somebody who he had a good rapport with, then you can meet with eye, So there are so many details, little details that he thought of while making portraits. And of course, that X factor that he puts into it, which is basically the actualization of the colors into a human form, will always remain.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Varma and Mrs. Maini. My last question, and this is to both of you. How do you plan to continue Raja Ravi Varma's legacy?
Gita, I think you should answer that first.
So I think it's about, the 2 things that we are very excited about is, talking about this princes and patrons and all of the people who approached him and, patronized him and take it forward. It's to bring as much as diversity as we can into the curatorial practices. And I think the third way is to accept as many invitations as we get. It's a situation of plenty. It's a good situation to be in, and talk about it as much and take it out there. So that's what it is with diverse programs. That would be my way, but I would like Mrs. Varma to have the closing comments.
No, I think you have said it all, Gita. That's exactly how we should take it to the next level and in whatever way we can. And I think this St. Petersburg instance has really opened our eyes to a large international way of bringing it out. So I think that would be our next goal, to truly go global.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rukmani Varma and Gitanjali Maini. It was a tremendous pleasure talking to both of you. And I don't know how to say this, but there's a certain royalty, a certain royal grace about Rukmani Varma. It's on her face, as all of you who saw her would attest to. It's in her words, it's in the way she holds herself up, in the way she responds to my questions, some of which were not so very easy to answer. And for those of you who have seen her paintings, and I have, there's something very royal about her paintings. It's something like this. If I met you on the street, and if I met you on the street, Mrs. Varma, and if I didn't know that you were royalty, I would still know that you were royalty. That's the thing about you. Thank you very much for your presence and for your insights into Raja Ravi Varma's paintings, the soul of his paintings, as you said. You also said once, and I quote, artists have no expiry date. Raja Ravi Varma, I'm sure, will have no expiry date. So I believe would be your paintings. May you continue forevermore to paint for us, Your Highness. Thank you so very much. I just remind our viewers that, thank you so much, Mrs. Varma, and thank you so much, Gitanjali. You're the one who organized it. You're the one who brought Mrs. Varma before us. Really thankful to you, and you give a very understandable exposition about the Heritage Foundation, which I think is very useful. I'm not, as I said, I repeated many times, not into painting very much, so I was not able to follow up on some of your questions. But as a viewer of Raja Ravi Varma's paintings, there were many things I could talk to Mrs. Rukmani Varma. Thank you both so very much. I'll just close by reminding that on the 14th of November, we have our next episode, which is on the culinary traditions of the state. We are calling it From Karimin to Kuliki Sarbat, the cuisines of Kerala. Thanks once again, Mrs. Rukmani Varma. I'll call you Your Highness one more time. I think it's just to satisfy myself. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mrs. Gitanjali Maini. I hand over the mic to Mohit or to Aditi for wrapping up.
Yeah, tonight it's my turn. I thank you both for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Joseph, for this very entertaining session tonight. It was really, really exciting to hear from you both about the work of preserving Raja Ravi Varma's legacy. It has been actually very insightful because we've had a couple of questions also that we were not able to take on what would be your advice for young aspiring artists, which Mrs. Varma, I think you've touched upon it in the course of today's talk itself, when you said that to be able to see further than what the lens can see and to be able to perceive, and I think that would be what every artist would be aiming for. That was one question that was answered. And I think Gita, when you were talking about how the history of the piece, how much of history comes through a painting to us today, that's something that we work on a lot at the museum also, because with the artwork we're able to see the entire history of India over the past 100 years in our collection, and that's something that's very important, especially for young, like you were saying, you want to pull in the younger audiences. It's such an important thing to be able to do, to bring in the younger crowd to appreciate and understand historical events from the point of view of paintings, and that's a great thing that you're doing. Thank you both so much from the bottom of our hearts, from City Book Leaders and Kerala Museum and Mr. Joseph. Very big thanks and gratitude to you both for joining us.
Not at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Good
Thank
night.
you to everybody.
Thank you, Aditi.
Bye-bye,
Goodbye,
Mr.
Gitanjali. Goodbye, Mrs. Verma. Pleasure.
Thank
See you. Bye-bye.
you so much, Mr. Joseph. Thank you. Thank you.